Hello everybody, Plato here, and today we will be going over all the new legendary sets and new Class T3 mods PCF showcased in their armor showcase recently. I know this video is a bit late, but better late than never. They also included a few new weapons and new T3 weapon mods, and we'll be covering those as well. Throughout this video, you may notice that there have been changes to current T1, T2, and T3 mods. We won't be covering this right now as they can still be subject to change. I'll do a follow-up video on all the mods changes from Vanilla to Worldslayer when it officially launches, so stay tuned for that video. Another quick note is that we will not be going over the builds that were made for this presentation, as this is more of a showcase of fun new things to come and not meant to outline a viable build. With that out of the way, let's jump right into it, starting with Devastator. The new set they showcase for Devastator is the Concussioner Set. Taking damage generates melee energy. Using your melee skill releases the energy, dealing 80% of damage taken within a 10-meter radius. The release damage scales with your armor. Generated energy depletes gradually over 2 seconds. Before we move along to discuss the new Class T3 mods that are showcased along with this set, we should note something very counterproductive with the whole set bonus in general. The set relies on dealing 80% of damage taken within a 10-meter radius for your melee. The release damage also scales with your armor. So what if the damage reduction from all the armor you're stacking, as well as Golem, since it provides a 65% damage reduction, actually reduces the absorbed damage, in turn making your melee do less damage? Now that's some next level trolling from PCF if this is the case, but we'll find out more when we actually get hands on Worldslayer. Moving along, let's focus on the new Class T3 mods that they revealed. Nothing new on the weapon side of things here. We've already covered Mythos, and the Guillotine is nothing new. Although it is nice to know the kind of damage numbers we are getting from some of these mods at level 75. 6.7 million from Omen, 16.2 million from Radiation Splash, and 22.2 million from Moaning Winds. Nice. Huge shout out to the homie Bossify for working extremely hard on his Outriders Outpost 2.0 app. It looks amazing, and I cannot wait to see its final form. The first new Class T3 mod we'll be taking a look at is Forced Feedback for Reflect Bullets. Upon contact, the barrier inflicts X damage that is increased for every enemy in close range, which is 10 meters, up to 10 times. One thing that we'll have to confirm at a later time is the damage the barrier inflicts once per enemy, or can you keep in contact with the same enemy and keep damaging them until Reflect Bullets' duration ends? To add on to this, Force Feedback would synergize well with Auto Reflect, which is also a mod for Reflect Bullets, which says you can now fight while the skill is active, but you cannot manually deactivate the skill. The trade-off is, it only negates 50% of the damage. Our next new Class T3 mod we'll be looking at is Rockfall for Golem. Skill throws a debris bomb at a direction of a random enemy every 5 seconds that deals X damage. Every enemy that is hit by a rock fragment from the debris bomb receives 30% more melee damage for 3 seconds. This effect does not stack. This is a pretty nice mod as it deals decent passive damage, but more importantly, applies a debuff for your melee. Heading to our third new Class T3 mod PCF showcased here is Equator for Reflect Bullets. Damage blocked by the skill is released as a damaging anomaly disc that rotates around the player. The damage dealt is increased dependent on the amount of damage blocked by the skill. I can see this being a pretty good mod, but it does depend on how much the damage from the release anomaly disc do in the first place and what the increase looks like with the damage blocked using Reflect Bullets. For mod number 4, we have Concussive Force. While it's not a Class T3 mod, it is a T3 mod dedicated to melee, and it looks pretty good. Your melee skill deals 25% more damage in a 100% bigger range. This is going to be a must-have mod for all melee builds as it provides free damage and more range. Who doesn't like that? For the last Class T3 mod PCF revealed for the Devastator with this showcased is Chip Off the Old Block. This is a new T3 mod for Golem. While the skill is active, using your melee skill while sprinting creates a Golem clone that jumps towards the nearest enemy and deals 300% of the melee skill damage within a 3-meter radius, with a 5-second cooldown. This mod also looks really good. 300% of the melee skill damage is very nice, just make sure you don't waste it on one Profero. For my finishing thoughts on this new set and its bonus is that it's going to need a massive buff and a look into the release damage from this set scaling with your armor. More armor equals more damage reduction, which equals reduced absorb damage, which equals to melee doing negative damage, and that's without also taking Golem into consideration. Heading to our second legendary set, we have the Shieldbeast Set for Trickster. Every percent of shield increases anomaly power by 1%. Stay tuned for a proper Trickster build using this set when Worldslayer launches. My good friend Mediocre deep dove this build in the beta and can't wait to share it with you guys when we're able. Before we look into the class specific T3 mods, let's take a look at the new weapons alongside their T3 weapon mods first. The first new gun showcased is the Final Penance double gun with its new T3 mod Mage's Rage. Critical shots grant a 10% anomaly power bonus for 10 seconds, and this stacks up to 4 times. This one is quite good. 40% max anomaly power bonus for 10 seconds is very nice for certain builds, and you'll definitely be seeing this mod in a future build guide I have planned when the DLC drops. The second new weapon we see showcased is the Thunderclap Narrow Auto Shotgun with its T3 mod, Nicola's Revenge. Shots link up to 5 enemies within a 4-meter radius around the initial target, dealing X damage over 2 seconds to each of them as long as the initial target is alive. This new mod is a great little AoE that you'll get for free, and I can see this being quite useful in some builds. Will there be other mods better than this? Probably, but not bad for a fire and forget AoE. For the final weapon showcased here, we have the Lumberjack Revolver with its T3 mod, Essence Extractor. Successful shots on enemies afflicted by any status restore 5% of your max health. Each active status applied to the target multiplies the amount of healing received. This has a 3-second cooldown. This mod sucks. Now, let's take a look at our class-specific T3 mods, starting with Body Count. This is a mod for Twisted Rounds. When the skill ends, the next Twisted Rounds cooldown is reduced by 10% for each enemy killed during its activation, up to 90%. This specific mod looks to have been tailored to go alongside the final capstone on the new bottom packs tree, Perpetuum Trickery. Will it be any good though? Well, you'll have to wait and find out later when the build revolving around the Shieldbeast set is showcased. Our second new class T3 mod we are introduced for the Trickster is Skull Piercer. This is another Twisted Rounds mod. While the skill is active, critical damage is increased with every critical shot up to 20%. I'm not too sold on this specific T3 mod as we already have a T1 mod, Twisted Fate, that gives us 15% crit damage when the skill is active. A T3 mod only giving up to 20% crit damage is underwhelming, and I hope that they adjust some numbers here or just rework this mod in general. But if you wanted to do an all crit build with Embalmer's Rage, this can slot in very nicely. Moving to our third new class T3 mod, we have Trophy. This is a new T3 mod for Venator's Knife. Successful shots on enemies marked by the knife make them drop energy orbs that grant shield. This is a great mod and synergizes really well with the Shieldbeast set. The more ways we can take on shields, within reason, will benefit us greatly for a build revolving around the set. For the fourth new class T3 mod we have is Cut Them Deep. This is another new T3 mod for Venator's Knife, and it looks great. Elites marked by the knife receive 50% more damage. This is going to be a must take on any Venator's Knife build, but I wonder if this 50% more damage is additive or multiplicative. We'll just have to wait and find out. The last new T3 mod for Trickster that is showcased here is Hive Cut, yet another Venator's Knife mod. Damaging an enemy marked by this skill also activates the effect on other marked enemies within a 6-meter radius, dealing 50% of the initial damage. This is pretty much the pain transfer version for Venator's Knife. Another must mod for a Venator's Knife build in my opinion. Like I always say, AoE is king in Outriders. My final thoughts for this set is that it looks very promising and it will open up a new way of playing Trickster like I mentioned earlier. I can't wait to showcase this build with this set when the time comes. Our third new legendary set that we are introduced to is the Scorched Zealot Set for the Pyromancer. This is another melee focused set similar to the Devastator's Concussioner Set. The Pyromancer melee skill fires a projectile that explodes upon contact, dealing X damage and inflicting ash to enemies within a 5-meter radius. Damage of the projectile increases by 25% for each enemy hit with Feed the Flames up to 100%. Bonus is spent on the next melee skill use. Compared to the Devastator melee set, this one on paper looks to have more going for it and dare I say could be quite viable if built correctly. Let me know if you want to see a proper build around this set in the comments down below when I get around to playing Pyromancer during Worldslayer. Just like with the last two armor sets revealed, let's first focus on the new weapons. Now we've already covered Sunfall in our 5 new weapons video, link down in the description below for that one, but if you paid attention you can now see that the burn to enemies on the T3 mod Firestorm has been lowered to 8 seconds versus 10 seconds. The cooldown for the mod has also been reduced to 10 seconds versus 15 seconds. This is a nice change as it means a bit more uptime on Firestorm, can't complain there. Just like with Sunfall, we've already showcased Charred Lance and its T3 mod Death Ray, but we now find out that the Anomaly Beam deals X damage every 0.3 seconds. Nice! The only new weapon introduced with the Pyromancer set showcase is the Corruptor Revolver with its T3 mod Target Rich Environment. Critical shots ricochet to 5 enemies within a 12-meter radius. Ricochet deals 30% of the initial shot's damage. This has a 3-second cooldown. Overall, not so sure how well this mod will perform, but for all you pistol lovers out there, you'll be happy to know that Worldslayer is going to make pistol builds less of a meme. Maybe. Probably. Looking at our new class-specific T3 mods, we are first introduced with Ashen Bloom. This is a Feed the Flames mod. Enemies affected by the skill explode, dealing X damage and inflicting ash to targets within a 5-meter radius. This is a welcome mod for Feed the Flames as it provides a way for the skill that used to not do damage, do some pretty good damage with AoE to boot. This is also going to synergize really well with the current vanilla mods such as Flame Grasp and Wide Grip. The next new class T3 mod we have is Molten Lead. This is a mod for Heatwave that says the wave leaves an anomaly aura behind for 10 seconds that increases weapon damage by 20% when standing in it. This bonus does not stack. Personally, I think for a T3 mod, this one's not that great. Pretty much like a Dum Dum Bullets, but with extra steps. For the third new class T3 mod we are being introduced to is Cauterizing Flames. This is a Feed the Flames mod. Every percent of overhealed gained through the skill grants a 1% firepower bonus for 5 seconds, up to 50%. I hope we get some sort of icon indication so we know when our characters are in overheal. This is a new mechanic introduced for Worldslayer. This mod will need to be tested to see if the overheal gains are consistent enough to slap it on. Our fourth new class T3 mod for Pyromancer is Voracious Flames. This is another Feed the Flames mod. Enemies below 50% health receive 50% more damage from the skill. I wonder if this will affect the explosion damage bonus from the new T3 mod Ashen Bloom we just covered earlier. If it does, it could be hot. If it doesn't, skip it. And finally, the last new T3 mod we are introduced to is Scorched Earth. This is a Heatwave mod. After the skill ends, the wave returns dealing X damage and inflicting burn on enemies in its path. On paper, this one looks pretty meme, but hey, I could be wrong. Heatwave already applies burn on its initial cast, and the damage we get here from Scorched Earth is so minimal that I think this is going to be a skip from me. For my final thoughts for this set is that it looks more promising than the Devastator melee Concussioner set, but hard to really say how viable it's going to be without further testing. Last but definitely not least, we have the new legendary Flame Leper set for Technomancer. Inflicting Toxic on an enemy 3 times transforms the status into Blightfire, which deals more damage over time. My first question I have here is how much damage over time? The set bonus is relying on Blightfire to have good enough dot damage to make it usable. If it's low dot damage, don't bother with this set. Medium to high dot damage could be decent. On paper, it looks mediocre at best, even with all the toxic damage buffs we have on our trees and mods. Focusing first on the new weapons that are revealed here, we have the Decadence Auto Sniper with its T3 mod Relativity Theorem. We've already covered Deathscape in our weapon video, and Lucky is nothing new. Critical shots reduce one random skill cooldown by 10%, and this has a 2-second cooldown. It's a new T3 mod, that's for sure. Will I ever use this in a build? Probably not, because there are going to be better options in the form of T3 mods than a 10% cooldown reduction on a random skill. Taking a look at our first newly introduced class T3 mod for Technomancer with Focused Discharge. This is a T3 mod for Blighted Turret. The turret discharges anomaly beams that deal X damage every 0.3 seconds at up to 5 enemies within a 5-meter radius. Blighted Turret has never been a damage dealing turret skill, and this mod won't save it in any way, even with the new Flame Leper set bonus. Quick note, while this is not a new T3 mod, Breathe In has been updated to also apply weakness to enemies within a 10-meter radius, while previously it was only a cooldown reduction for Fixing Wave. Breathe In with its new change can now be paired with Fixing Wave to have it apply lethal devices from the new packs tree. Nice! Our next new class T3 mod for Technomancer is Party Starter, another Fixing Wave mod. The strength of the skill is increased by 8% for each enemy within the arena up to 100%. This one is going to be a skip for me, as I don't see why we would ever need to dedicate a mod to increase Fixing Wave's healing range, as that's all this mod would do. Moving forward to the third new class T3 mod, we have Alchemical Mastery. Now this is a T3 class mod, and this is a great one for Blighted rounds. While the skill is active, receive a weapon damage or anomaly power bonus equal to 30% of your status power based on whichever is higher. I don't know if I need to say anything else. This mod is cracked out of its mind and, in my opinion, a little bit overtuned. This is a must-take mod for any Blighted rounds build, period, whether you're going anomaly power or firepower. Next, we have a new T3 mod, but not a class T3 mod, but might as well be since it affects both Toxic and Blightfire with Virulent Compound. Deal 15% more damage to elites afflicted with Toxic or Blightfire. Afflicted elites explode when killed, dealing X damage and spreading the status to other enemies within a 5-meter radius. Another must-take mod for any techno build, as we will always be applying Toxic, basically getting a second Captain Hunter for free. The second to last new class T3 mod showcase for Technomancer is License to Heal, another Fixing Wave mod. Activating the skill grants a 10% weapon damage bonus and 4 seconds of infinite ammo. This one is a bit deceiving because you see infinite ammo and probably creamed your pants. But we already have Quartermaster that refills your magazine anyways, so do you really want to waste another T3 mod for a whopping 10% weapon damage? But then you'll say, Plato, what about for weapons like the one-shot sniper rifles and revolvers as an example? Good point, but I'll counter with this. Using Fixing Wave on a build focused around one-shot sniper rifles and revolvers sounds like even less damage and a clunky playstyle to me, but maybe someone out there can prove me wrong. And for our final new T3 class mod introduced is another one for Fixing Wave with Bad Medicine. Overhealed players inflict toxic and deal X damage for every % of overheal in a 10-meter radius. Now this one could be pretty interesting in applying lethal devices with Fixing Wave, and I can see it performing quite decently depending on what the overheal percentage looks like. My only finishing thought for this new set is that again it's going to be good or bad based 100% on how much dot damage Blightfire actually will do. That's it for this one. Thanks again everyone, and I hope you enjoyed this little sneak peek at one of the new armor sets for each class. As always, if you want to see all of my other Outriders content to get you all caught up, make sure you check out those videos popping up at any time now, as well as those links in the description down below. If you want to throw a sub my way, like the video, send a comment, and even hit that notification bell, I'd appreciate it. As always, until the next one, peace.